23 minutes to 8, BBC Sussex, Friday morning. As you've been hearing, 100 years ago exactly today, just a few moments ago, whistles rang out, sending thousands of British troops over the top and into the path of those German machine guns. And on that first day alone, staggeringly, 20,000 men died. It was the Battle of the Somme, the bloodiest battle of the First World War, in fact the worst day in all British military history.
Tonight, we think of them as they nerved themselves for what lay ahead. We acknowledge the failures of European governments, including our own, to prevent the catastrophe of world war.
That was Prince William speaking at a ceremony in the Somme last night. Services are taking place there at Westminster Abbey and around Sussex right now as well. But let's just hear one story of one man's battle. Nick, Angier.
Right.
Sorry about that, Nick.
That's right.
You're from, I know you're from Chichester, and I can say that properly. And your grandfather fought in the East Surrey Regiment. And a remarkable story of, well, before, during, and no doubt after as well. But tell us your uncle's story then.
Well, essentially, I might start actually just a bit before the First World War, because he was a very keen footballer. Used to play for Thames Ditton in Surrey. Arsenal were interested in signing him, but just as things might have happened for him, the First World War happened. So rather than joining Arsenal, he joined up with many other men, and then the Kitchener battalions, what they call the PALS battalions, because they all joined up together. And he joined the East Surrey Regiment. But
there was a football moment. We know about the First World, the Christmas football moment. This was a different.
This was a different moment. And the platoon commander was a guy called Captain Billy Neville, and his bright idea to take the men's minds off the danger they were facing was that he'd get some footballs, which he bought in England and brought back to him for the offensive, and he planned that they would kick these footballs across no man's land during the offensive. And so it's quite interesting to think that exactly, because they went over. In fact, they went over slightly early, 7:27, and I think they were trying to sneak before the German gunners got in place. But they were kicking these footballs across no man's land exactly 100 years ago, as we talk at the moment.
I find that unbelievable. But that was his way of getting people to go, sort of kick the football, dribble your way into no man's land.
Yes, that's right. I think there were a number of them who were quite keen footballers, and I think Captain Neville knew this, and this was part of his psychology, to get the men's minds off the danger they were facing.
It's interesting, actually, listening to Prince William's words there, and I suppose it's difficult to put yourself in the mind of those soldiers the night before, but it must have been an awful time, because there were horrible conditions, obviously, as well.
Absolutely, and I think I exposed them for a very long time. I was reading something about this myself, that many wars, before that, had been a quick battle, and it was over. These guys were there, year after year, and a lot of stress was on them.
But tell me about your grandfather. What happened to him?
Well, he was one of the ones advancing. And if I just fit in the Captain Neville thing, what happened with him was that the advance stalled on the German wire, and Captain Neville rushed forward at that moment, trying to encourage the men forward, but unfortunately he was shot dead at that moment. But they did capture the German trenches, so it was actually more successful. They were in the southern bit of the attack. Most of the attack faltered completely, but in the southern bit they were next to the French guns, which were heavier, and they had taken out some of the deep jump German bunkers, so they actually were able to get into the German front line. But the British gunners were still shelling the German front line.
Being shelled by their own side.
Yeah, they were. Right. So my grandfather at that point thought they were all cowering in the trench, sort of feeling very relieved, but he thought this was ridiculous. We were still getting shelled by our own side. So he leapt up onto the parapet with signal flags to signal the British gunners, stop firing at us. At which point he got hit by shrapnel from a British shell and was injured. And he carried the shrapnel inside him for the rest of his life.
In that environment, it must have been very hard to get him back to his home lines as well.
Yeah, that's right. And that happened about noon. And I'm not quite sure how long it took him actually to get back, but I think in a sense he was one of the lucky ones, because he ended up being repatriated back to Britain. But I think the other thing which is interesting is that he probably would have been up for some sort of award, but a bravery award, but all the people who witnessed it subsequently perished, so you couldn't be cited for a medal or something because you needed a certain number of witnesses.
Well, that's incredible, isn't it? So there was no one left to say what he'd done.
Yes.
I mean, it's a bit of a cliche that the men who fought in the First World War never talked about it. What about your grandfather?
No, he was quite quiet,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I think really my father, who did a lot of research into this, I think he did it subsequent to his death because. I mean, he died when I was about 15, so I was probably maybe a bit young for him to be sitting wanting to tell me all about it. He'd come and watch me play football and comment on that, but he wouldn't be telling too much about his experiences. And he became a very strong pacifist between the two world wars, where they lived in the city of London during the Second World War, and the flat they lived in was bombed, and he then decided he'd join the RAF, so he was also involved in the Second World War as well.
Yes, but maybe above some of the... Well, mind you, that wasn't very safe,
no, he was just
it?
ground crew, actually. He's a bit old to, at that time to actually get in a plane.
He carried that shrapnel from the First World War to his death. What a fascinating story.
Yes, yeah.
And it's through individual stories like that that the nature of the battle comes alive. Right?
Yeah, I could just add one other thing. My daughter's just recovering from leukemia, which she's fought for 6 months. And I just sort of wonder, she showed tremendous courage during her fight, and you sort of like to think maybe a bit of the courage my grandfather had.
It's working its way through the generation.
Yeah, that's right, somewhere down there. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Lovely to talk to you, Nick. It's BBC Sussex.